For those of us who have not met him, Dike Chukwumerije is a performance poet. In fact, is foremost performance poet when it comes to poetry theater in Nigeria. Many of you may have heard about the Made in Nigeria theater production, which has been to, I think, 20 states now and counting, right? And it's a very big honor that we have him here with us today. So please, can we put our hands together? All right, so not taking our time, I'll just dive straight into it. So the Nigerian political system is quite geroncratic for those of us that follow straightly with what the Nigerian political scene is. And what I mean by that is that we have a lot of old people in our political space. And of course, recently we had the not too young to run bill passed to law. But despite that, we still discovered that the space is dominated by old people. And I remember watching one of your productions, Man Made God. I saw how it highlights what it takes to climb the ladder of the political scene, where you have to like be a boy, and then from being a boy to growing into the political space, and then of course becoming a godfather at the end. So my question is that how can young people find their voice in a system like this?
They ask you dumb questions. I just came to. I mean, it's one thing to find your voice. It's another thing to use your voice. Finding your voice is the same principles like anywhere else in the world. You have to look around with an open heart. You have to touch different things, and you have to listen deep within you to see what resonates deeply with you. What activities, what issues resonate deep within you. But I don't think the problem really is finding your voice. It's using it or following the path that you know that is yours in a society as structured in the way ours is. And the answer to your question is very simple. It's courage. The courage to use your voice in the Nigerian space where everything is trying to ram us into certain pigeonholes and certain boxes. And whether you as a young person have the courage to follow your path, or whether you will be swayed away from it, persuaded away from it by the normal logic. What do they do? This thing not going to make money for you. How will you amount to anything in life? How will you use this thing and feed your family? So if you listen to those voices and you're persuaded by it, then you follow the routine paths. And that's how poets like us end up as bank tellers and marketing agents for companies and things like that. But if you have the courage to hear the voice of your own soul and your own spirit and speak it out, then, and let the consequences fall where they may, then you'll be fine. So I don't think it's anything unique to Nigeria. Young people everywhere in the world will face the same challenge. Know who you are and have the courage to be who you are.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So I remember the last time we had a film show at your center, and we watched Kongi's Harvest, and we're having a discussion, and you mentioned that most of what we do these days are things that, of course, the artists, poets, writers in the past have done before. And, of course, many of the problems that were prominent then are still here now. It's almost like nothing has changed. So my question is that how effective is art when it comes to creating social change?
How effective is art?
Yeah.
You guys will wonder why I keep repeating the question. What's the South African national anthem? The first stanza. Does anybody know it?
I have no idea.
I'm sure somebody here knows it.
Anyone? Give away.
Thank you. Somebody's hand. Okay, it's not thank you. I'm just joking. Okay, but do you know it?
I'm reading it.
Well, I'm sure we know, or some of us will know the rhythm. Nkosi Sikeleli, Africa, Malupanga Yesu Ponowayo. Have we heard the song? Yeah. It's that song is the first stanza of South Africa's national anthem today. Once upon a time, it was the national anthem of about 3 or 4 African countries. It was literally the song of the liberation movement in Southern Africa when they were fighting for freedom from racist oppression. And the song was a motivating factor in that battle. And it was a song written by a young man, Sontonga, sometime in the late 19th century. He didn't write it for any reason. He didn't write it to motivate or carry a liberation struggle. He just wrote it because on that day, like it is for many artists, his soul twisted one way and a bit of art came out. But that bit of art would go on to feed an entire liberation struggle for over 100 years and lead to independent countries in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in South Africa. So when we ask what can art do? All those years when black people were oppressed and in slavery in America and couldn't fight, they didn't have gun and bullets to fight with, and they just had their bodies and their voices, and they would come out at rallies and they would say, "We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome." When? Someday. They don't know. But it's those songs that keep hope and faith alive. And without hope and faith, there is no tomorrow. So art is critical. It feeds the spirit. It's more important. I always tell people that before people went to the moon in spacecrafts, they went to the moon in stories. The mind and the imagination has to get there first before the body can arrive. You have to see it in your mind. And that's the job of the artist, to paint a picture so that the scientists can start building towards it. So, how can you ask me what is the function of art? It's everything. It really and truly is everything. And the problem is that Nigerian artists are not dreaming hard enough. We are tethered too much to reality. We think too much about food and rent. And I was speaking to some young creatives today, and I said it is important. You have to think about food and rent. There's nothing like, you can't be playing the guitar for long on an empty stomach. You have to think about food and rent. But when it comes to time to create, you have to create as if anything is possible. You have to launch out into the deep and let your imagination go wild. Because you're the one that sets the bar. Right? So creativity is the key. It is the solution to Nigeria's problem. I'm telling you, it's not politicians, it is artists. That we have not yet told the stories. A nation is a story. A nation is fiction. It's not reality. It's a story. It's a narrative you craft. America, the land of the free, that was built on genocide and slavery. It's a narrative. It's a story you tell. So I'm sorry. I can get carried away with this.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So because of our time, we'll take 2 questions from the audience, right? So if you have a question, just the first 2 persons, if you have any question you want to ask anyone, no one is driven. Oh, okay, so 1, 2. All right, so you go first.
A pleasure to have you here.
You said that it's about using your voice at the end of the day, and then being, knowing who you are, and then being who you are, and then, because when immediately you said that, in my head I was like, at what expense? Because that was the first thing, because based on what is in front of us. So when people like us decide to make, okay, when I say like us, I mean artists, I mean writers, musicians, whatever. People like us decide to step forward and impact a certain level of change or use our voice per se, because it's a bit of an opposition to fight this opposition and leave a bit of a dent, a small dent to make something there, right? What is the effort that is being made within ourselves to push that change or to recognize that change so that it can lead somewhere, Because that's the same question, like, at what expense? I guess my question is, are we doing enough that when people around us try to make these small impacts, this small change, are we doing enough to carry for it to actually make something of a lasting change or something that will transcend beyond just somebody being a martyr, or being some sort of a hero or something? Because it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Like, what's the expense of the sacrifice that I'm making at the end of the day for my country? So, yeah.
No, it can come back to back. Okay, what do you prefer?
Let him answer this.
Okay.
Sorry, can I?
No, just
Welcome to the stage. It's a subject that I dramatize on stage in a show called Man-Made Gods. And I tell the story of Leah Shaibu on one hand and Malala Yousafzai on the other. That in life, you never know which hand fate will deal to you if you decide to stand up to power and oppression. So you have these two young girls who both stood up to oppression. And one was shot in the head. Malala Yousafzai was shot in the head. And she recovered and went on to become a global icon. And Leah Shaibu was kept in captivity and has, I'm sure some people don't even know, sitting here don't even know who Leah Shaibu is anymore. Was a young secondary school girl that was kidnapped by Boko Haram and asked to convert if she wanted her freedom, and she refused, and we've never heard from her since. So the same act of courage, two radically different outcomes. One person went on to be celebrated all over the world. The other person has just disappeared from the narrative. I also give the example of Nelson Mandela, who everybody here knows, and a young man known as Steve Biko, who I'm sure nobody here knows. And these were two people who both fought for the freedom of South Africa. Nelson Mandela was put in jail, spent 27 years, came out and became a global icon. Steve Biko was put in jail, and one day his jailers entered in there and beat him to death. And he has disappeared from memory. So the short answer to your question is there are no guarantees. Which is why the only thing you can do in life is be yourself. That's all. Just be yourself. And if nothing else, at the last moment you will have the satisfaction that I did it my way. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person.
Okay, I actually had two questions, but he has answered one, which is to be yourself. The first question I was going to ask was because you mentioned something about Nigerians not dreaming enough or not dreaming big enough. I'm the kind of person that I don't like doing conventional art. My mind will not accept it that I just do regular something that everybody does. So back then in school, there was this program we were supposed to come for, and then my team, there was someone in my team was like presented something that I knew everyone had done before. It's something everybody had seen, but what's different about it? I recommended that, okay, I feel like we should do something different. It doesn't have to be, and he was like, no, this can't work, and all of that, and it worked actually, because the team just disbanded and everybody. It took me 3 days, and I struggled with that 3 days, but it took me 3 days to assemble something different, and the outcome was just magical. And I love something like that. But sometimes, I've seen that if you dream too big, it can also be, I don't know, bad, dangerous, you are being looked at as an outcast or something. So my question is, should we keep dreaming big? Like, will it make an impact later? Because when you keep doing that, it feels like you're not doing enough, or it's not affecting anything. It always feels like nothing's happening. Like you've done it, and so what? What are you trying to do? You're trying to stand. You are going to end up like, you might end up in the 6 feet, something like that. So should we? Is it working?
So even if you, I don't know how to say this, but as a creative, as an artist, as somebody who wants to live life from inside out, you have to learn to stop worrying about outcomes, the relevance of yourself, of your existence, of your being. It must be a human thing. I can't imagine a flea on the back of a cat worrying and wondering to itself, what is the purpose of what is the relevance of my existence? I don't know. I believe in God. Some may not, but I think everything that is in creation has a purpose. If you don't know my purpose, it's on you. It's your ignorance. So we have children come into the world with gifts that nobody has seen before. And then somebody tells you that it's useless because they've never seen it before, but they don't know the future. They don't know how humanity is supposed to evolve. Now, I had the gift of poetry early in life. I was writing poetry from a young age. There is no school I went to that anybody ever told me that this thing is a gift. It was always like, what are you doing? This weird guy that writes poetry. At some point, because at that time, writing poetry was associated with, I don't know, sexuality. So in secondary school, people thought that maybe I was gay just because I wrote poetry. Nobody ever told me it was a gift. It's something that you can use to amount to anything. But if you are fire, you must burn. If you're a mountain, you must stand. If you're a river, you must flow. If you're a poet, you must speak. It's about knowing who you are. Oranges don't go about questioning, why am I in the world? Why am I not an apple? Why am I not a coconut? You're not a coconut, you're an orange. And even if nobody ever plucks your fruit and eats it, you still have a right to be in this world and produce. We don't know what the consequences, what the outcomes of our lives will be because we live such finite lives on a vast template. You can't tell what's going to happen 150 years after you're gone. Who's going to stumble on your work? Van Gogh died broke. Nobody knew him. Nobody knew his art. Today, he's one of the most celebrated artists in history. Martin Luther King died in his 30s. He didn't see Obama. He didn't see any of these things. But he just lived a life of conviction. He was just who he was. So I worry sometimes that we African youths are too utilitarian. We always, if what is going to come out of it, show me before I will do it. And in the end, that may just be the difference between developed and developing. It may not be road, it may not be bridge, it may not be high-speed train. It may not be the courage to follow a path you don't know the end of. That's in some societies, they raise their children to follow paths they don't know the end of. And in other societies, they raise their children to look and see where the path goes first before stepping on it. That may just be the difference between the way your society turns out. So if there's anything you remember tonight, and I know you are thinking, oh, how? Just have the courage to be yourself, who you truly are. Say what you truly believe, and leave the rest to fate.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Please can we appreciate